So I've been saying it for over a year now. Pretty much everything I've been doing to the E36 M3 has been in preparation to get it out on the track for the very first time. And as of 2 nights ago, I am officially signed up for my very first track day with the car. And with that means I'm kind of on a time crunch now. I do have a little over 2 months, but you know what they say, the last 10% of the work takes 90% of the time, and the remaining things I have yet to do on the car, I've put off for a reason. A lot of this stuff I can't really do here in the garage, but what I can do, I will film, of course, and show you guys. And so that's what we got going on today. Today we're gonna be refreshing the rear subframe as well as the rear upper control arms. I'm going to be painting all of this stuff, replacing the bushings in the subframe with poly bushings, replacing the bushings in the control arms with monoball bushings. And then part 2 of this video, we'll be dropping the rear end and swapping all of these parts out. Thought it'd be cool to just kind of, like I said, show you what I can do here, refresh this stuff and maybe walk you guys through the process in case you're planning on doing something similar to your E36. So anyways, enough talking. Let's get into refinishing these parts. Here we go. As you guys just saw, I got done prepping all of this stuff. I scuffed pretty much every part of it that I could get to. Obviously, I can't get into every single nook and cranny. And on top of that, there's a lot of like weld splatter all over these parts from when they were made. And so, I can only go so far without wrecking the little Scotch-Brite pads. But anyways, everything is scuffed up, everything is taped up. You guys saw all of that. And now it's time to paint it. So I got to take it out back. I got to hang it up. I bought a bunch of these little like bungee cables. I'm going to, string these up basically and then go to town. And hopefully I could paint these, at least to the best of my ability. Obviously this being under the car, it's not a big deal if I can't get it perfect. But yeah, so let's take this out back, set it up and go to town. Here we go. All right, I thought this was pretty funny. I wanted to show you guys. As you can see, I have a grand total of 18 little bungee cables holding the rear subframe up. But you know what they say, if it's, stupid and it works, it's not stupid. So it's at the perfect height. That's why I'm using so many, because otherwise it was like kind of too high. But anyways, thought this was kind of funny, thought I'd show you guys. But this is my little paint booth. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you've seen it before. But yeah, this is where I do all of my paint work. So anyways, let's get to painting this subframe. Here we go. right, so it's been a couple of days. Everything is painted and I've allowed it to dry, and the only thing left we have to do now is install the bushings into the subframe. I already went ahead and installed the bushings into the control arms. As you can see, they're different than the Revshift bushings. I opted to go with Turner Motorsports monoball bushings for these, and unfortunately I didn't have the tools here at the house to press those in, so I did take those to work and use the shop's press to do it. It took about 3 minutes. It was very, very easy. I strongly suggest using a press if you have access to one, but thankfully the Revshift bushings, you don't need a press. Everything should go in pretty easy with a dead blow hammer or a rubber mallet. And not only that, but if you're unfamiliar, I can't speak for any other brands that make bushings for these cars, but Revshift does a really good job of kind of, you know, making the install as easy as they can, because all of this stuff has indents in them that tell you where these bushings go and the orientation of them. And so anyways, I'm going to walk you guys through that. We're going to get everything installed, and then we're going to kind of mock everything up. I have some other parts over here in this box that we're going to toss on here to kind of finish up what this is going to look like before it goes in the car in part 2. So let me change the camera angle and get a better view for you guys so you can see how these go into the subframe. All right, so here we're looking at an E36 rear subframe, the way it would sit in the car. So from your guys' perspective, this would be the front of the subframe, and then this would be the rear of the subframe. Now, when it comes to installing bushings, and more specifically Revshift bushings, they make it about as easy as it could possibly be to install these correctly. And one way they do that is if you look at the inner sleeve right there, as soon as it focuses at the top, you can see it says front. And the same thing applies for the rear ones. It would say rear on these. That means that these are the front bushings. Not only that, but once you take these apart, you can also see that kind of cast into these. At the top, this one says FT. That stands for front top bushing. And then this one would say FB. And then for the rears, it would say RB for rear bottom and RT for rear top. So very, very simple. You pretty much can't mess these up. And regarding the front bushing specifically, if you look, not so much about the thickness difference, but if you notice on this one, there's like this cutout, this like notch right here. This is the front top bushing, and the reason you know that for sure is because the reason that cutout is in there is because when they welded this to the subframe, like this little like sleeve, I guess you could say, when they weld it in, this welded spot sticks up compared to over here where they didn't weld it. And so that channel is meant to kind of go over this welded spot so the bushing will sit flat to the subframe. And so it's cool that they did that. Like I said, they pretty much every single which way you know, they can tell you how these go. They give you the information for that. I suppose the only one you could mess up is the rear ones, but if you notice, they are, you know, different thicknesses, so there is an orientation. So again, just be mindful that each one of these has letters at the top that indicate where they go. So this one says RB, so this is rear bottom. Now, really quick, I do kind of want to touch on this front diff bushing. If you're unsure, according to their instructions, the way you install this is from the front. You want this like collared part to face the front of the car. So you basically press it in like this until it won't go anymore, and then it is officially installed. And so, yeah, couldn't be any simpler. I think more companies should do stuff like this to make it just more clear, you know, the orientation in which things go, the direction in which things go. And yeah, props to Revshift for kind of going through all that and doing that work for us. So you pretty much can't mess it up. So now I'm going to go ahead and put all the bushings in, and then I'm going to mock all of this stuff up and kind of get an idea for what it's going to look like once it's in the car. And once we do that, I'll also kind of talk to you guys about what's in this box, and then we will finally wrap this episode up. So let me install these bushings. Here we go. All right, and there we have it. This is the entire rear end minus the trailing arms completed, refreshed, and ready to go. All new bushings, all new parts, all new paint, and I couldn't be more stoked. This looks awesome. I think the silver will look really cool underneath the car. I know it won't hardly ever get seen, but you know, it's just one little thing that I know is, you know, underneath the car, and I think it'll look pretty cool. But anyways, yeah, couldn't be more stoked. You know, you guys kind of saw in the little like teaser of me mocking this up, but I ended up going with these IRP, individual racing parts, rear lower control arms, for two reasons. First, they're adjustable, at least more adjustable than the OEM ones are if you get any adjustment at all out of those. And secondly, because the inner bushing where they connect to the subframe is spherical, which means at this point, once this is installed in the car, every single articulating bushing on the rear end of the E36 M3 will be spherical, so it should feel really dialed and planted. And at home, whenever I'm doing any sort of aggressive driving, whether it be out on back roads or more importantly out on track, it should, you know, instill a lot of confidence, at least me with the car. Like, it should feel really good and it should feel very predictable, and that's kind of the whole point of why I've been doing all of this stuff. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know if any of this stuff is overkill. I've had several people tell me that, you know, a stock E36 M3 is plenty enough, but the thing is, when I picked mine up, it didn't have a great maintenance history. It had over 200,000 miles, and I figured if I was going to spend the money to just get the car to OEM level, I might as well spend a little extra money and just kind of get the mods I would have ended up getting anyways. And so that's why I'm kind of jumping from where the car, you know, was at when I picked it up to all of this stuff. I'm just kind of skipping spending the money twice, if that makes sense. But anyways, at this point, I'm rambling. Like I said, consider subscribing, liking this video, commenting. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you made it to this point in the episode, thank you for watching. I appreciate you checking it out, and I hope to catch you in the next episode. It should be a fun one.